of Irish writer James Joyce, during which the events of his novel, which take place on June 16, 1904, and of course you're saying to yourself, well, it's not June 16th, but Dublin is 8 hours ahead of us. So it's past midnight in Dublin.
Midnight there now.
So if you want to imagine you're in an Irish pub in Dublin, past midnight, you may do so. Now, June 16th is the day that Joyce's protagonist, Leopold Bloom, takes his journey through Dublin, and it echoes Homer's Odyssey. It's also the day that James Joyce met his future wife, Nora Barnacle, and they strolled through Dublin, on the 16th of June, and she became rather romantically forward. And for a young Irishman, Catholic boy, this was truly a revelation. It's celebrated all over the world. Hungary, Germany, Argentina, New York, in many different ways. Some folks dress up in Edwardian clothes and recite. There's pub crawls in Dublin. Detroit, in 2013, had a marathon reading of Ulysses that went on for 45 hours. We're not going to be doing that this evening.
We're going to beat it.
What we will be doing is having friends and family come up at various times during the evening and recite or declaim poetry or prose. Let me suggest that the whiskey tasting menu is a wonderful accompaniment to a spot of poetry or prose. So just to get us started, I'd like to recite a little something by William Blake.
Hope you're speeding here.
Where's the rubber
Which goes something like this. I asked a thief to steal me a peach. He turned up his eye. I asked a lithe lady to lie her down. Holy and meek, she cried. As soon as I'd gone, an angel came. He winked at the thief. He smiled at the dame. And without one word spoke, had a peach from the tree. And twixt ernst and joke, enjoyed the lady. Now, if I might invite Mr. Holman Smith to the stage.
Good evening, my name's Peter, and I've got poems to read tonight. And unlike the name of the poet, they're mercifully very short. The first one is titled In the Garden of the Tuileries, and is written by, trying to remember his name, Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wells Wilde. In other words, Oscar Wilde. And Oscar Wilde was his lonely self-imposed exile in Europe. He sent himself to avoid scandal somewhere in England, I believe. And he wound up in several places, one of which was Florence, Italy, and the others in Paris. He wrote the story of In the Tuileries Gardens while sitting on a freezing cold December day watching children at play. I think the poem probably reflects the loneliness of the man at that time. So here we are, In the Tuileries Gardens by Oscar Wilde. This winter air is keen and cold this winter's sun. But around my chair the children run like little things of dancing gold. Sometimes about the painted kiosk, the mimic soldiers strut and stride. Sometimes the blue-eyed brigands hide in the bleak tangles of the bosque. And sometimes while the old nurse cons her book. They steal across the square and launch their paper navies where huge Triton writhed in greenish bronze. And now, in mimic flight, they flee. And now they rush, a boisterous band, and tiny hand on tiny hand, climb up the black and leafless tree. Ah, cruel tree, if I were you, and children climbed me, for their sake, though it be winter, I would break into spring blossoms, white and blue. Sometime later, Wilde was in Italy, in Florence, and I can picture him in this story, in this poem he wrote, on his hotel balcony, overlooking the River Arno on a morning, watching the sunrise. I think his loneliness is well described in this. The oleander on the wall grows crimson in the dawning light, though the grey shadows of the night lie yet on Florence like a pall. The dew is bright upon the hill, and bright the blossoms overhead. But ah, the grasshoppers have fled, their little attic song is still. Only the leaves are gently stirred by the soft breathing of the gale, and in the almond-scented vale, the lonely nightingale is heard. The day will make thee silent soon, O nightingale. Sing on for love, while yet upon the shadowy grove splinter the arrows of the moon. Before across the silent lawn in sea-green vest the morning steals, and to love's frightened eyes reveals the long white fingers of the dawn. Fast climbing up the eastern sky to grasp and slay the shuddering night, all careless of my heart's delight, or if the nightingale should die. Wilde was also a linguist, a wordsmith, and he loved words, he loved the language. You can probably tell that with his language. But he wrote a poem, which is really a sonnet, to the word liberty. Now, liberty was a word used in the 19th century to some disuse and misuse. The word was never quite ambiguous enough to people. So here it is, Oscar Wilde's sonnet to the word liberty. Not that I love thy children, whose dull eyes see nothing save their own unlovely woe, whose minds know nothing, nothing care to know, but that the roar of thy democracies, thy reigns of terror, the great anarchies, mirror my wildest passions like the sea, and give my rage a brother, liberty. For this sake only do thy dissonant cries delight my discreet soul, else might all kings by bloody knout or treacherous cannonades rob nations of their rights inviolate. And I remain unmoved. And yet, these Christs that died upon the barricades, God knows it, I am with them in some things. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Ken Mercer, who has written a poem which I believe is dedicated to his wife.